It's time now for another legal deep dive into two major national cases. Our first case deals with former President Donald Trump's $250 million civil fraud trial. Yesterday, Ivanka Trump testified that she had no role in her father's personal financial statements. Ivanka is the final witness after her father took the stand on Monday and her brothers Eric and Donald Jr. testified last week. The New York AG accuses them and other defendants of falsely inflating asset values to get tax benefits and other financial perks. Trump, of course, has denied any wrongdoing. So Hector joins us once again. Explain Ivanka's role and really the weight of her testimony.
Well, again, not televised, but the reports and kind of, following this trial, no question Ivanka's testimony was a 180 from Donald's testimony, the former president's testimony earlier. The AG, though, had a plan in calling Ivanka. And it wasn't really to get, as with some of, Trump's children, it wasn't to get her to admit her involvement in these financial statements, but rather that she had an awareness that there was an effort to lessen the value of some of this property that was being used to back some of the loans. And so this isn't, again, strategic, connecting the dots to other evidence that the AG admitted prior in the trial. And so, I think the AG understood that, Ivanka is very polished, obviously somebody who...
Right, very savvy.
Very savvy, very different than I think, the Donald's two sons that came in and really it got, a little combative when they were on the stand. So Ivanka came in, I think the AG, though, scored some points, but, in terms of whether Ivanka actually hurt or had made any admissions, that didn't come out in her testimony.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that she testified as a witness versus, the rest of her family as co-defendants. But what does ultimately the AG want to do and prove with this case?
So, this is a situation where really the judge has already found, that they presented fraudulent material. Right, or fraudulent documents. This whole issue is really about the penalty. And it's about, really taking Trump out of New York in terms of any further business dealings, and really, they're going to remove
him down.
His ability to, to be Donald Trump, which is, everybody knows him as a real estate mogul, and as a business person in New York, that would end essentially if he's, if ultimately this judge gets, his way and imposes that penalty.
Right. Okay, so what happens next then?
So now it's the defense, right? So we've had the New York AG come on and make their evidence, and interestingly today, the defense, after the close of the state's case, made a motion for what's called a directed verdict, which is essentially, judge, the state presented their case and they didn't meet the burden in this case. You got to dismiss it. Court didn't make a ruling, but essentially said, be prepared to call your witnesses on Monday, which is code for, I'm not gonna dismiss the case at this point.
Yeah.
I want to hear your matter. Donald Trump has indicated they're ready to present about 120 witnesses in their defense, and they expect this to go about another month.
Okay. All right. The saga continues.
Right.
All right. Let's get to the Alec Murdaugh trial. Yesterday, the court clerk, Becky Hill, spoke publicly for the very first time, defending herself in a sworn affidavit over allegations that she tampered with the jury. Hill said she, quote, did not tell the jury not to be fooled by evidence presented by Mr. Murdaugh's attorneys, but his attorneys are alleging that Hill pressured the jury to reach a quick guilty verdict, invented a story about a Facebook post to remove a juror that she believed would have voted guilty, all to secure herself a book deal. Murdaugh was found guilty of 2 counts of murder for killing his wife and son. His defense attorneys want a new trial because of Hill's alleged allegations. So explain what is happening here on both sides and really how serious this is.
So when you first heard the defense allegations of, juror misconduct, juror tampering, you really looked at this and
that's frightening.
That this was incredible, that what is going on. Now you've had this, though, come back. You have this punch now by the defense, by the clerk, by Hill, basically saying, no, that's not true. And she submitted an affidavit. But importantly, the jurors that were interviewed in connection with the allegation of this misconduct are also denying, right, that anything occurred. And there was one juror who ultimately is, I think, the one that the defense is hanging their hat on, made no mention of these allegations that about this, misconduct prior to being dismissed as a juror. So now you're looking at it, and there's a real question in terms of, what the defense put forth initially.
Exactly. So does her sworn affidavit then undermine the defense's arguments?
I think if there are 4 legs to Murdaugh's argument for a new trial, what you see now in the court clerk's response and some of the state's response cut 2 legs off. So.
Yeah. Okay, so what do you think happens next? Is he going to get a new trial?
So there are 2 things. He's got to get a hearing first,
Okay.
right, on this issue. And then, after the hearing, the judge would rule. I think that he will get a hearing, but ultimately, reading kind of the tea leaves and some of the arguments, I don't think he gets a new trial that's going to be ordered. But we're going to have to watch, and maybe that's going to make for another Netflix series here.
Another saga that you and Ginger have been just eating up. All right,
Yeah,
I gotta watch that.
Absolutely.
No kidding. All right, Hector, it is so great to have you as always on these 2 national cases and breaking down the local ones.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.